I'm Lena. On my 30th birthday, my parents handed me a suitcase instead of a cake. Told me I was too old to freeload. I'd been paying the bills in that house for years. Groceries, electric, even part of the mortgage. And still, they tossed me out like I was nothing. I didn't expect balloons or a surprise party. I hadn't gotten that since I was a kid. But I guess I thought there'd at least be a happy birthday or a slice of store-bought cake. Something. Anything. When I pulled into the driveway, the porch light was already on. The house looked exactly the same. Tired, chipped paint around the windows, a loose shutter tapping against the side. I remember sitting in the car for a second, fingers gripping the steering wheel, staring at the front door like maybe something on the other side would feel different this year. I'd picked up a cake on the way home, just a small one. Vanilla frosting, $12 from the grocery store bakery. They'd written, "Happy Birthday, Lena," in red icing that looked rushed. I didn't bother correcting the cashier when they misspelled my name. What was the point? The air inside the house was stale, quiet. The kind of quiet that presses into your skin. No greetings, no voices, just the buzz of the old overhead kitchen light. Terry, my father, was already at the table. Meatloaf, canned corn, instant mashed potatoes. Same dinner we had every Wednesday like clockwork. Lila, my mom, sat across from him, stirring her food like it might reveal a better answer if she just looked hard enough. Neither of them looked up when I walked in. I set the cake down on the counter, the plastic bag rustling a little too loudly in the silence. "You're late," Terry said. Not a question. Not even a glance. I slid off my coat, hung it by the door. Had to work late, reports to finish. My voice was even, flat. Lila didn't say a word, just kept fussing with her fork. I sat down, the legs of the chair scraping softly against the linoleum. I waited for something, some acknowledgement. Nothing came, just the dull clink of silverware against plates. No happy birthday, no card. Halfway through dinner, Terry set his fork down with a heavy clang, the kind of sound that makes your stomach drop even before the words come. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, staring straight at me. "You're too old to be living here for free," he said, voice calm, measured, rehearsed. "It's time you moved out." At first I thought he was joking. I looked at Lila. Nothing. She stared at her plate like it held the answers to a different life. "I pay the electric," I said slowly. "The internet. Half the mortgage. The groceries." He snorted. A short, cruel laugh. "Paying a few bills doesn't mean you get to stay forever. This isn't a hotel." "Princess," that's what he used to call me when I was little. Now it felt like a slap. It hit me then. This wasn't a moment of anger. This was planned, calculated. They had picked today, my birthday, as the deadline. I pushed my plate away, appetite gone. The food, the tension, the silence, all of it sat like a stone in my chest. I stood up, slow, deliberate. Terry looked smug, like he'd won something. Lila still didn't speak. Her shoulders slumped, eyes fixed on the table. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I walked upstairs, past the cake still sitting on the counter in its crinkled plastic bag. The handle had stretched, digging into the frosting. One of the candles had fallen over. The bedroom door closed behind me with a soft click. I leaned against it, letting the weight of the moment sink in. My suitcase was already half packed. Somewhere deep down, I think I knew this was coming. Not today, maybe, but someday. I moved like a machine, folded my jacket, rolled up socks, filled the gaps with toothpaste and phone chargers. My hands were steady. Not because I wasn't hurting, but because I was done. When I was finished, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the little cake box I'd brought up with me. It looked ridiculous now. Crooked writing, cheap plastic window. Hope packed into something so small. Without thinking, I knocked it off the nightstand. It hit the carpet with a soft thud. Frosting smeared across the beige fibers. Happy birthday, Lena. I sat on the edge of that bed for a long time. The ruined cake lay crumpled on the floor beside me. Frosting smeared across the carpet like some kind of joke I didn't get. My suitcase was packed, zipped, ready. I should have cried, maybe. Should have yelled, called someone, done something. But all I felt was empty, and underneath that emptiness, something colder was starting to take shape. It wasn't just tonight. This had been building for years. I just hadn't let myself see it. I thought about the time Dad cracked a molar during one of his benders. Wouldn't go to the dentist for weeks, even though the pain made him snap at everyone. I paid for the whole thing in cash. $1,000 I'd been saving to get my own place one day. He never said thank you. Just came home with gauze stuffed in his mouth and flipped on the TV like nothing happened. Then there was the winter Mom's tires gave out on that icy back road. She called me in tears, stranded, scared. I left work early, bought her 4 new ones on the spot, and paid for the tow. She patted my hand at the repair shop and said, "You're a good girl," before sliding the invoice across the counter for me to cover too. I climbed up on the roof last spring when the shingles started peeling off. I was up there in the rain, hammering and patching while Dad sat inside with a beer, shouting out the window about how contractors can't be trusted. Not once did it cross his mind to help, and not once did I let myself stop to question it. It had always been me. I was the one who made sure the lights stayed on, the house stayed warm, the fridge stayed full. I covered their missed bills, balanced their debts, picked up the slack every time they dropped it. And still, they looked me in the face and called me a freeloader. That word kept echoing in my head. Freeloader, like I hadn't been holding the whole damn place together. I stood up and walked over to my nightstand, pulled my laptop out from under the bed. The screen lit up the room in soft blue light. Familiar. Quiet. My fingers moved automatically. Years of handling the bills had turned it into muscle memory. Electric, water, gas, all in my name. All being paid with my account. I hovered over the cancel button. Just for a second. Then I clicked. The confirmation screen flashed, asking if I was sure. I was. One by one, I cut the cords. It felt surgical, methodical, a kind of calm that only comes when you finally stop pretending. If I wasn't family enough to be loved, then they weren't entitled to what I gave. The truth hit me harder than their eviction ever could. I had been the backbone of this family. Quietly, invisibly. I kept them standing, and the second I wasn't useful, they tossed me aside like I'd never mattered. But this time, they were going to feel the absence. Not through screaming or slammed doors. Not through anger or some messy confrontation. They were going to feel it when the lights didn't turn on, when the water stopped running, when the house they'd built on my effort started falling apart without me. I closed the laptop slowly, the hum of it fading out. It wasn't revenge, it was clarity, and it was long overdue. Once I started, I couldn't stop. It was like some quiet switch flipped inside me. Not anger, not revenge, just resolve. The kind that comes when you finally stop begging people to treat you like you matter. I opened the next tab. Internet account. Gone. Then streaming services, all still linked to the living room TV. I clicked through each one, removing my payment info. Netflix, Hulu, Prime, delete, remove, cancel. The names on the profiles made my stomach twist. Dad's, shows. Mom's favorites. Even one labeled family night, like that hadn't died a decade ago. Next came the auto insurance. Both cars, my dad's beat-up pickup and my mom's old Camry, were under my policy. I'd added them years ago because it saved the household money. I remember her saying that like it was sweet, like I was doing something smart for all of us. I clicked through the removal process, unchecked their vehicles, pressed confirm. Each click felt like snipping a thread that had been choking me for years. Then I opened the banking app. The joint savings account. The one my mom had insisted we keep, just in case. Just in case of what? Just in case they needed to drain it again when the power got shut off? Or when a check bounced and they needed me to quietly cover it. Again. Without a single word of thanks? I froze it. One tap. No withdrawals, no transfers, no access. They'd have to go through paperwork and signatures and verification now. And by then, I'd be long gone. After everything was done, I pulled out a yellow legal pad from my bag and sat cross-legged on the edge of Nora's spare bed. I started writing down everything I'd just disconnected. Line by line, a record of what they'd lost. Electric, water, gas, internet, cable, auto insurance, savings access. It read like a blueprint of their comfort, of the things they'd gotten used to without realizing it was me keeping it all alive. When I finished, I just sat there, staring at the list. My handwriting looked calm, clean, almost too neat for what it meant. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from my cousin Joel. Just 5 words. Lights are out. Dad's losing it. I stared at the screen, the knot in my chest loosening a little. It had started. My phone lit up again. And again. Unknown number. Then Mom. Then Dad. Then the house line. Calls. Voicemails. Texts. One after another. The first message from my mom was shaky. "Sweetheart, something's wrong. The power's out. The internet's gone too. Did you cancel something by mistake?" The next one sounded more strained. "Please call me. We can figure this out. I'm sure it's just a miscommunication." Then came my dad's voice. No hesitation. No softness. Just loud and clipped. "You think this is funny? You think shutting off the damn power makes you clever?" Another text from him. All caps. "You'll regret this." I didn't respond. Not to any of them. I turned my phone face down on the nightstand. Nora was in the kitchen, reheating leftovers. The smell of garlic and butter drifted through the apartment like nothing had happened. I walked out and sat on the couch. The soft cushions, the hum of the microwave, the quiet buzz of life that wasn't built on guilt. It felt strange. Peaceful. She handed me a plate without asking anything. Just sat next to me and pressed play on a random show. And I sat there, watching. My old life fall apart from a distance, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't flinch. It didn't take long for the lies to start. I woke up to a text from an old classmate, someone I hadn't spoken to in years, with just a screenshot and a question. "Is this about you?" It was a Facebook post. My dad's, name right at the top. The photo was an old one of him and my mom, sitting on the front porch, looking tired and worn. The caption read, "Our daughter abandoned us when we needed her most. No warning, no goodbye. Just vanished. Pray for us." Hundreds of likes, dozens of comments. Some were sympathetic. "Sending love, Terry. So sorry you're going through this. Kids these days have no loyalty." And then there were the ones that hit harder. The ones that didn't ask questions. Just accused. What kind of child does that to their parents? "After everything you did for her?" Ungrateful brat. I felt it in my chest, like something pressing down on me. Not just the lies, but how quickly people swallowed them whole. Nora found me staring at my phone, frozen. She set down a cup of tea and just said, "Want to talk about it?" I didn't answer right away. I just turned the screen toward her. She read it. Didn't even blink. "You knew this might happen." I nodded. "Yeah. Just didn't think it'd sting this much." She sat beside me, her voice quiet. "You don't need to scream to be heard, Lena. You just need to speak." So I did. I pulled out everything I had. Years of receipts, bank statements, screenshots of text messages asking for help, email confirmations for bill payments, scanned, copies of repair invoices with my name on them. I laid it all out like a puzzle, each piece adding weight to the truth. Then I opened my laptop and started writing. Not a rant, not some angry spiral, just a timeline. This is what I paid. This is how long I paid it. This is what they told people. And here is the proof. I posted it quietly. No fanfare, no dramatic caption, just the truth. At first it was quiet, a couple of shares, a few private messages from people I hadn't talked to in years. Then it spread. Neighbors started commenting. I remember seeing her mow their lawn every week. She was the one patching their roof last summer, wasn't she? I always wondered why Lena stayed as long as she did. Then came the stories I didn't expect. One from a teacher who said she'd noticed the exhaustion on my face in high school. Another from a neighbor who remembered me fixing the broken fence at 16 while my dad drank a beer on the porch. The tide turned slow and steady, but once it shifted, it didn't stop. I sat on the couch, phone buzzing every few seconds, watching their version of the story unravel. They couldn't control it anymore. The sympathy they'd fished for? It was drying up, replaced with questions, with doubt. And for the first time since this all started, I felt something that wasn't pain. I felt seen, not pitied, not defended, just seen for what was real. I didn't post anything else. I didn't need to. Sometimes the truth doesn't need a spotlight, just a crack of daylight to breathe in. It had been a quiet few days. Not peaceful exactly, but quiet. Enough for me to start thinking maybe the worst had already passed. Then came the knock. It was a soft, almost polite knock, which somehow made it worse. I opened the door, and there he was. An officer, standing in Nora's doorway with a manila envelope in his hand. "Lena Hart?" he asked. My stomach dropped. He handed over the envelope. "You've been served." I nodded, thanked him because that's what polite people do, and closed the door with shaking hands. I didn't have to open it to know who it was from. I sat down at the kitchen table, tore it open, and read the first line. Terry Hart and Lila Hart versus Lena Hart. The charges? Abandonment, emotional cruelty, theft. I laughed out loud, and it sounded strange in the room, tight and bitter. They were trying to sue me for walking away from the life they drained me dry in. I let the papers sit there on the table for a few minutes, just sat and stared at them like they might explain themselves. But they didn't. Nora came in a little while later and saw the envelope. She didn't even need to ask. She just picked it up, scanned the front, and said, "Let's fix this." By noon, I was on the phone with a legal aid office in the city. I explained everything as clearly as I could, forwarded them every receipt, every screenshot, every record I'd already posted. The woman on the other end of the line listened quietly. Then she said, "You have a strong case. Honestly, it sounds like you should be the one suing them." So I did. I filed a countersuit for financial exploitation. Years of unpaid labor, coerced support, and emotional manipulation. When the day came to meet them at the station, my hands were steady, even though my chest felt like it was full of bees. I sat across from them in a cold gray room with bad lighting and plastic chairs. Terry looked furious, like he'd been storing it all up just for this moment. His face was red, jaw tight, foot tapping like a clock. Lila looked smaller than I remembered. Her hands clutched her purse so tightly her knuckles had gone white. The officer read through both sides calmly. When he got to the list of financial documents I'd submitted, bank statements, payment records, contracts, he looked up at my parents. "If you move forward with this lawsuit," he said, "you could be exposing yourselves to criminal liability. There is a clear pattern of financial dependence and emotional coercion." My father's chair scraped back as he stood up. "This is a witch hunt," he snapped. "She's manipulating everyone." The officer didn't flinch. "Sir, yelling won't help you here." My mom was crying by then, loud, messy sobs that echoed off the cinder block walls. I didn't move. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. They stormed out a few minutes later, anger and shame wrapped up in silence. I walked out slowly, not because I wanted to savor it, but because I could. Outside, the sun was bright and warm on my face. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was bracing for something. Just stood there and breathed, and I said, not out loud, but clear enough in my head to count, "This time, I'm not the one apologizing." The strange thing about silence is how loud it can feel at first. After the legal meeting, after they left that station full of rage and tears, there was this weightless kind of quiet. No more voicemails, no more texts, no more waiting for the next hit to come. So I did something I should have done a long time ago. I opened my contacts, and one by one, I started deleting. Terry, Lila, my aunt who'd called to scold but never once asked if I was okay, my uncle who'd said, "Family is family," as if that erased everything they'd done, cousins who had never shown up except to pass judgment from behind a screen. Delete, block, remove. I didn't rush it. I didn't do it in anger. I just let them go. And when I was done, the quiet that followed didn't feel empty. It felt clean. A few days later, I signed a lease on a small apartment downtown. It wasn't fancy, just a little brick building with creaky floors and a window that rattled when the wind blew. But it was mine. For the first time, I wasn't living in someone else's idea of home. I was building my own, piece by piece. I bought a secondhand couch. The cushions were worn, but it had a softness that made me feel held. A table with scratches across the top, like it had lived a whole life before I found it. I painted the walls a soft blue, something calm, open. Every little choice felt like a quiet kind of rebellion. Not dramatic, not loud, just mine. One afternoon, while unpacking the last box I'd shoved into the back of my closet weeks ago, I found it. The plastic cake topper from my birthday. The one I'd bought for myself. It was still bent. Still had a little dried frosting on the base. Held it in my hand, expecting that old sting to hit again. But it didn't. It didn't hurt to look at it anymore. It felt like proof. Not of what they'd done, but of what I'd survived. I placed it gently on a shelf above my desk. Not to remember the night they threw me out, but to remember the girl who didn't let it destroy her. Later that week, I came home to find a small envelope slipped under my door. No name. No return address. Inside was a plain white card, and in careful handwriting, just one sentence. "You were never the problem. Some people just fear the ones they can't control." I stood there in the doorway for a long time, holding that card like it might disappear if I blinked. I didn't know who sent it. I didn't need to, because I already knew the truth. I wasn't broken. I was just buried. And now I was finally letting myself rise. The thing no one tells you about healing is that it doesn't arrive like a wave. It's quiet, It's slow. It sneaks up on you in the middle of folding laundry or sipping your morning coffee when you realize you're not bracing for anything anymore. There are still days when the memories creep in, uninvited. A phrase, a smell, a flicker of guilt that tries to convince me I overreacted, but it passes, because I've stopped arguing with myself about what was real. It was real. The betrayal. The silence. The weight of surviving in a place where love came with strings tied so tight they left bruises. I used to think walking away would leave a hole in me, that without them, I'd be lost. But I wasn't lost. I was finally allowed to breathe. What I feel now isn't emptiness. It's clarity. No more bending myself to fit a mold they never made space for. No more shrinking to keep the peace. No more proving my worth just to be allowed to stay. What I feel now is clean. Some nights, I still sit by my window and look out at the streetlights, the quiet rhythm of life unfolding without fanfare. And I think about that girl who bought her own cake and smiled at the cashier like it didn't break her heart to do it alone. She didn't break. She built something better from the rubble, and she's still here. A few weeks ago, I started writing again, not for anyone else, just for me. Nothing fancy. Just thoughts, memories, small reminders of what I've learned. Tonight, I wrote one final line in my journal before setting it aside. Sometimes you have to lose everything to remember you were never the one who needed fixing. And if you're still listening to this, maybe you needed to hear that too. Maybe you've walked away from people who said family, but never showed you love. Maybe you're standing at that edge right now, wondering if choosing yourself means you're selfish. You're not. You're allowed to choose peace. You're allowed to let go of what hurt you. And if you've been through something like this, if any part of my story feels like a page from yours, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Because stories like ours deserve to be told. And if this one helped you feel a little less alone, don't forget to subscribe. Because here, your story matters.